I have always been civil with my half-brother. We were close as kids, but he started to have an attitude at 13 and pretty much stopped being nice, and started messing with my things / making fun of me and doing pranks to annoy me / privacy, was gone with him coming into my room and taking my things. Whenever I complained, my stepmom would normalize his behavior and make excuses. My dad never really grounded him and thought that talking to him will get him to behave better. I'm currently in college. I live in a rented apartment and have car to help me get to the university or other places. The car isn't expensive or fancy at all. I saved up for it 2 years ago. I decided to have Christmas dinner with my family. It's the perfect opportunity to be with family since I haven't seen my dad in a while. I arrived at my dad's house and left my purse and my keys on the kitchen island after my stepmom told me to help with dinner. My half-brother started talking about my car in the kitchen while my stepmom was listening and asked if he could take it for a couple of hours to hang out with friends. I politely told him no. He threw a fit and brought up how I needed to relax and not worry, but my answer was still the same. While we were sitting at the dinner table, my half-brother got up, washed his hands, and I thought he went outside. I got busy talking to my dad, and after I got up to wash my hands, I noticed my car keys weren't there. I went outside to ask him, and neither he nor my car were there. I lost it. I started calling his phone, but he hung up on me several times. I was furious. I told my dad I'd call the police if he didn't come back with the car. My stepmom jumped to defend him and said I was being unreasonable to call the police. I called him one last time, then I called the police. My stepmom freaked out when my half-brother got picked up by the police. She told me to go explain the situation to the authorities, otherwise he'd spend the night in jail. But I refused, especially since I still hadn't got my car back. Stepmom yelled that I ruined dinner and that it was no big deal. He was going to return it after borrowing it from me, but he didn't really borrow it, and she heard me say no. I don't know what she told the police, but I didn't give permission to use the car. My stepmom's side of family are mad at me for doing this to my brother and hinted that I don't consider him family. My dad's side of family sided with me, saying he deserved it. My dad said I overreacted and I shouldn't have called the police when he disappeared for 4 hours. I talked to the police about what happened, and I learned later that my stepmom said that her son was allowed to borrow it, and that it was a misunderstanding. I wasn't going to let her continue to lie, but my dad told me to back off and let it go. This really upset me. My half-brother wasn't even berated the way I was by the family. I've been with my wife for 2 years. She has a 21-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old daughter from my previous marriage. My late wife passed away in 2014. She left a few things for our daughter, including a gold jewelry set. Her mom was devastated she didn't get to gift the set to our daughter on her wedding day. I keep it in my closet since it's expensive and my daughter is too young to have it. I'll hopefully gift it to her on her wedding. We were sitting in the kitchen when my stepson was hesitant to ask me something. We're in good terms but have our fair share of arguments. He said his fiancée was taking something from his mother's and my closet, saw the jewelry set and liked it very much. He asked if he could borrow it so his fiancée can wear it at her cousin's wedding. I found this unacceptable. I told him his fiancée had no business being in the bedroom and that the jewelry isn't mine. It's for my daughter. He asked me if my daughter will agree to let him borrow it if he talked to her. I told him not to even talk about it again. He got all pissed and said things I do not remember. When he and his fiancée were at the wedding, I discovered that the jewelry set was gone. I told my wife and we looked all over the house. I called my stepson to tell him about calling the police because I really thought someone stole the set. He said there was no need, that he borrowed it and will return it after they get back from the wedding. I yelled at him and told him to come back with it right then. I kept calling him till 12 a.m. when he told me to stop calling and that he'd bring it in the morning. I couldn't sleep that night. I felt terrible. In the morning he showed up at 10 a.m. He didn't bring it and started stalling, saying he forgot he'd bring it the next day. At this point it was clear he gifted it to his fiancée and was stalling. I got so mad I told him I will be pressing charges if he doesn't return the set today. We got into an argument. My wife said his fiancée was the one who wanted the jewelry set, but he was the one who took it, and it's not even mine, it's my daughter's, which made it worse, because I'm responsible for whatever happens to it. His grandparents berated me after I told them this and got mad and defended him when I said that I will be pressing charges. He stole and needed to be responsible for his actions. He didn't respond to my final calls, so now I've given him one last chance, and it's over. I pressed charges today. They're saying calling the police was extreme and cruel. They're all convincing me to back down. He was replying to me sarcastically when I said I'd get the authorities involved, and he didn't take me seriously. His mom said she'd try to talk to him, but I had enough of him stalling, hoping I'll just let it go so he can make his fiancée happy. I feel like an irresponsible idiot. I can't even look at my daughter without feeling frustrated and infuriated. I'm hurt, but what's worse is that this is my daughter's property that I couldn't take care of. My wife allows them into the room, although I told her not to several times. They're not kids, and there should be some boundaries. I am 20, female, have recently moved out of my mother's house for college. I enrolled in scholarship. The other night, my mother wanted her, my younger brother, and I to have dinner together. It's been a while since we've spoken, and I'm afraid this might happen again. We were having a nice night, the dinner was delicious, and honestly, we were all having a good time. Eventually, we got onto the topic of how things were when I was younger. I made the comment on how her behavior when I was younger made me feel like I missed out on a lot of things as a child. She disagrees, and tells me that I'm being dramatic, and that my childhood was perfect. Quote, I was lucky to have a mom who cared as much as she did. My mother gave birth to me when she was 18. My father walked out when I was young, due to a personal conflict between the two. So, she raised me on her own until I was 7. She met a guy, and they ended up having a kid together, my younger brother. He was a golden child to my mom. His father was only a temporary item, as he left as well, soon after. Although the father of my brother was still visible in his life, I didn't have anyone to look up to as a father figure. Eventually, my mom went through a phase of depression after they separated. She started to care less and less about her children, and more about her parties and men she wanted to sleep with. It ended up getting so bad that by the time I was 10, I was a full-time caretaker of my younger brother. With the exceptions of the weekends he was with his father. I started to cook, clean, do everyone's laundry, and take care of everything outside of the boundaries of my home. From ages 13 to 15 I began missing out and losing good friends because I wasn't able to participate in any activity related to anyone else. I didn't get a car or a phone until I was 18, and even then I wasn't allowed to leave my house. I graduated senior year with flying colors and ended up getting a scholarship to a really good college. I took this opportunity not only to focus on myself, but to also help my mother realize that I was not going to be around forever. When she found out I got the scholarship, she threw a fit and told me I wasn't allowed to leave my responsibilities here at home. I left a week after the conversation. I did make sure that my younger brother was safe with his second guardian at the time. My mother and I talked on some occasions but never really kept contact. We got together, and you know the story. She told me I am an asshole for saying that she never really took care of me or my younger brother. I told her that eventually, she will need to get help and stop victimizing herself. But I'm starting to feel guilty, and that maybe I was dramatic after all. I've officially decided that I no longer need my mother in my life at this point in time. I'm now going to only focus on myself, and working towards a successful career in law. Of course, my mom won't take it well, but it won't really matter to her in the long run. Her children never really mattered to her. I'm going to stay in contact with my younger brother, though. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't possibly go through the same amount of trauma I did. My fiancé, James, and I have been together for 3 years, planning a wedding for October 2016. A few months before we met, James bought a brand new home in a newer subdivision. We recently refinanced it and added my name. Before me, James dated a woman, Britt, for about 7 months. She's never been to this current house. From what he's told me, they broke up when he decided they weren't as compatible. The breakup was rough, to the point where he and neighbors called the police when she wouldn't leave his front yard and was screaming at 10 p.m. at night. This is all from what he and his sister have told me. I don't have a reason to not believe them. I've only had a few run-ins with Britt. These have been at restaurants or just coincidences out in public. We never spoke up until now. The problem, Brit has bought a house in the same subdivision that we live in. We even share a cul-de-sac. The only reason we found out about this is from a flyer we got welcoming her to the neighborhood. Our subdivision is very community-oriented. James insists he's never told her where he lives and hasn't spoken to her since the night he called the police. We both brushed it off as a coincidence, but lately it's becoming very weird. Here's why. I work for a company that allows me to work from home 3 out of the 5 days. Our home is a ranch and my office window faces the street. I'm not sure what Brit does for a living, but she does not work during the day. From about noon until 3, she spends her time walking up and down our street. When she passes our house, she doesn't take her eyes off of it. It's almost like she can see me in the office. She'll even stop in front of our house and stretch there for about 5 minutes. Every day anyone is at home. It makes me uncomfortable to the point where I have all of our blinds closed during the day. I understand the need for exercise, but she walks for 3 hours just going up and down our street. Another issue is when either James or I are outside with the dog, she'll let her dog outside and it will come sprinting to our yard. This causes her to come and get her dog. Every time she says, "I'm sorry, we're still working on training." James and I are always polite. Normally, I would be okay with this, but James has pointed out that any other time she lets her dog out and we're not outside, she'll immediately correct him before he runs off. She never corrects him when we're outside. We've been getting ding-dong ditched a lot since she's moved in. Something that's never happened in the 4 years that James owned the house. The doorbell will ring around dinner time, between 6 and 8, and by the time anyone gets to the door, no one will be there. It's gotten to the point where our Doberman has picked up the routine and waits by the front door, pacing. The last issue, which I believe might be illegal, is that our mail seems to go missing for a while and then pop back up. What I mean is, Brit will knock on our door and say that she received our mail and is just returning it. This has never happened with the previous owners in her house. We don't have a new mail carrier either. It seems to happen once a week and she'll always bring it on a Friday night. Based on the date on the envelopes, we can tell she's been holding it all week. This has pushed James over the edge because she had our water bill, which resulted in us being 2 days late on the payment. James is neurotic when it comes to paying bills. Every time I have to convince him not to go over and yell at her because we haven't actually caught her taking it out of our mailbox as much as I try to monitor it. She usually gets 2 days worth of mail because those are the days I'm not working from home. The other days I get it right away. I'm not sure what to do at this point. I don't want to piss her off by confronting her, but how can I get her to stop? She's making us nervous and I feel uncomfortable in my own yard most of the time because I know she is watching. I know this sounds strange, but I'm not sure if I can legally do anything about it. I don't have anything against her, it's just becoming an annoyance.